Hi, everyone. Welcome to APC and Outliers presentation on integrated remote operation centers, where Pedro, my colleague, and I will be talking about analytical versus operational and also remote versus local integrated operation centers. Just in terms of content, we'll be going over a little bit about ourselves, our company, integrated operations as we see it, as defined. Then we'll get into the main two discussion points around analytical and operational and remote and local. It's going to be more of a conversation between Pedro, myself, along with obviously presenting you guys with our opinions and our expertise. In terms of our company, Outliers is a small boutique consulting company which consists of only ex-miners. Interestingly enough, we're all miners who've worked in industry anywhere from 10, 15 years up to 30 years. A little bit about myself. My name is Saad Hameed. I joined Outliers as the Director of Integrated Operations, so that's my specialty. Prior to this, I was working for ArcelorMittal Mines Canada, where I was Director of the Integrated Operations Center. Pedro?
Yeah, thanks, Saad. My name is Pedro Grafigna. I'm an integrated operator specialist for my Outlier Mining Solutions. I have more than 18 years in the mining industry. I first started as a dispatcher, more like related to the dispatch area, different roles, dispatch engineer, supervisor, senior supervisor of the dispatch. Then I moved to the operation. And the last work before as a consultant, I was leading, I was a superintendent of the remote integrated operation center. The first one in the company that I used to work. It was a big challenge, and I was involved since the conception, building, and the end product to the fully operational remote operation center. It was very challenging and again, a good experience. So to wrap it up, I have a really good combination in IT areas and in mine operation, which gives me a good knowledge of the necessity for one side and what technology provides good results to the operation.
Yeah, that's a great intro, Pedro, and that's complementary to, sort of my function. I was also part of a fully operational IROC, which had operations, advanced analytics, and everything in place. And I was more focused on the people, process, and people management side. So this should be hopefully a good discussion for both ourselves and for you, the viewers. In terms of Outliers, we're an operational consulting company, right, focused on open pit underground mining operations. This is our current suite of services we offer. Like Pedro mentioned, we do a lot of stuff around fleet management systems and controls, asset management, and now recently we added integrated operations as a key service offering for our clients all the way from design to implementation. These are some of the project locations. We've worked around the world, and some of our team members are also located around the world. So we have a good grasp in North and South America, some parts in Australia, and obviously Africa. These are some of the clients that we've worked with in the past. Again, on numerous different types of engagements, ranging from fleet management systems to integrated operations, field training, etc. Getting into the main topic of integrated operations, or IO as it's known, right? Integrated operations is an alternative way in which companies can function. It's a change in their operating philosophy. It is about integrating people, processes, technology, bring them all together throughout your different value chain members, and really generating that extra value for your business in a more sustainable and profitable way.
Yeah, to add up to that conception, Saad, we're integrating too many things. We're integrating technology, different areas like maintenance, getting close to operation, to the process. But what the most important key things here, we're integrating people. Correct. And with the people, it comes discipline, workload, process, work environment, knowledge. And that's a key point. We're integrating knowledge between different areas. And in my best understanding of my experience, that leads to a better decision making.
Correct. Yeah, data-driven decisions, right? People making better decisions at the right time. In their, whatever business unit they're in, whether they're in technical services, whether they're in core operations or maintenance, it's about that collaborative approach. People sharing information, sharing data, having a higher level of situational awareness, and really driving the operations forward. In terms of key benefits, right? Integrated operations really starts off with your planning and scheduling, right? So the more you can integrate your different value chain members, whether it's maintenance, mine operations, mill operations, logistics, it's about how do you integrate the planning and scheduling of the tasks and activities first, so that no matter what is going on in your value chain, everyone is working towards that daily bottleneck, right? So whatever is the short constraint of the day, you're really planning around that at any given point in time. Then a little bit about Pedro, would you like to cover integrated operations itself?
Yeah, sure. It's a collaborative working environment. So you're, as I say, integrating people, and what the integration operation does is have a good understanding of all the areas that are integrating there, what affect one area to the other, or how I can do my job better to help the other, or what I am doing wrong that affects the other's work. So you have all the work line in front of you, and you can take decisions right there, and you can work collaboratively in the different areas.
Yeah, as an example, right, mine and mill operations, if one can imagine having your mine operator and your mill operator sitting next to each other in the same environment, same room, the reaction time greatly decreases between any kind of issues or problems that may occur, or any changes that may be occurring in either side, right? So it allows for both the supplier and the buyer to interact unanimously together and really help them reduce any kind of reaction time, so they can better prepare and plan and execute together, as opposed to opposing two different siloed parties. Obviously, a lot of this stuff revolves around data, advanced analytics, where you want, you know, some analytics functions either in the background or in the foreground on the floor, supporting these people in making better decisions, right? So you've got an execution layer, and then you have a tactical or analytical layer, which is analyzing your, you know, it can be production, productivity, your quality, grade, etc. And all of those things, you know, to ensure that they have the right information available to them and to be able to execute to the plan, which is determined. Pedro, something around technology and automation?
Yeah, of course. You know, different areas have different technologies that operate the mine. And here's a good point, to have different sources of data and integrate them all in one result. You know, sometimes they work as a silos, and this is the software that is dedicated only to one part of the mine, like process, and this is the other software that is only dedicated to other part of the mine. So integrating technologies, you can combine those and give a result, having information from both sides.
Correct. It's all around situational awareness and interoperability. And that's really the key takeaway when it comes to integrating people, processes, and technologies. In terms of now our key discussion point, right? You've got really fundamentally two different types of IOs. And one of the first things that comes to mind when people think about an IROC or an integrated operations center is like the famous example of a NASA control room, right? And you just see a bunch of folks, you know, smart folks sitting in a room with lots of screens. And the reality is there's a lot more going on underneath. That's just the tip of the iceberg. And as we explained as to all the complexities of integrated operations, planning, scheduling, executing, and controlling and monitoring, the reality is there's a lot more going on in the background. So here we want to really talk about two fundamentally, you know, sort of different types of IO approaches where companies will build an IO specifically for data analytics, and others will build one specifically operations and bring the operators together. So in terms of a quick background and history around this, right, these centers have existed for many years in different industries, right, whether it's, you know, the airline industry, which has amazing, you know, control rooms and control centers, to NASA, et cetera. In the mining, just relatively new in the sense that it's been around for the last 20 or so odd years, starting predominantly in Australia, where they had to do remote operations. And obviously there are some on-site facilities as well. So, centers that are on-site. Now, in terms of analytical, right, the need sort of is there where you want the data, you want the information, you want analysts to have a look at it. You want them to be able to really, see the information that's around and be able to deliver on information. And operational centers, right, you're really talking about core operations. Pedro, would you like to comment a little bit about this?
Yeah, the way that I see it, the analytical center is more where the BI guys stand. It's more the business improvement. You're looking at the trends, you're looking at different KPIs, and are the advisory of the mine. Okay, so you are not taking action in there or not leading the decisions or acting in the mine. You are helping the mine to do a better job. But on the other hand, the operational center is where all the things happen. You are not only looking at the KPIs, you are taking an actions right there. You are running the mine from there.
Correct. So in terms of, doing a real comparison between the two in terms of analytical and operational, Pedro and I decided to kind of look at the key major, sort of areas from people to risks to challenges and value. So we'd like to discuss that a little bit right now. In terms of people impact, right, when it's just an analytical center, you're not really moving people around. Everybody is doing what they're doing from a standard operations, maintenance, and technical services perspective. You're adding a layer of analysts that are analyzing this information. So in terms of analytical, people impact is quite low because they're just added on staff that are looking at information, they're sharing it. Your roles, responsibilities, is minimal in terms of any impact or changes. Whereas from an operational perspective, now you're moving operations folks into this environment of an integrated operations center where they're working together side by side. So obviously that is going to have a higher impact for people, which is going to obviously require more change management because it does have now, it means that people's RASIs or their accountability and responsibilities will change, and people will honestly, having to start working with others and breaking out of their silos and out of their comfort zone. So this is a difficult sort of, it's all doable, it all depends on your organization, but it is a more challenging and a more difficult path, obviously. Pedro, would you like to talk a little bit about decision-making effectiveness?
Yeah, sure. Well, here it says two keywords, it's passive and active, and I think that makes the big difference in there. The decision-making in the analytical center are not taken. They are helping the site to take decisions. In the other area, in the operational center, the decisions are made and given, are acting right there.
Yeah, overall, effectiveness-wise, right, you're not just taking advice and thinking whether you're going to make a decision or not. In operational centers, once the data or the information has been provided, it is an active live operational execution. So you have reduced sort of reaction time, and you're taking action on that information and that intelligence that is provided. And obviously in terms of value, you can see that an analytical center, yes, it provides you information, better reporting, better measures, but it's not taking the final decision. And that's where the operational centers have a higher value when it comes to sustained value being generated. In terms of risks, right, like we mentioned earlier on, people risk is obviously minimal when it comes to analytical, but there is a lot more change management risk and adoption from people risk when it comes to operational centers. Pedro, around technology?
Yeah, technology is the main challenge that you have is to integrate totally different platforms in one area. Of course, you're going to have one specialist working with one and the other one to working with that, but I suggest to have a really good skilled IT team that can get all the technologies that you have available that you could want to integrate in there to get one result or combine all the information they have in different platforms to give one result combining different data from different areas. But both in the analytical side and the operational area, both needs to have a really good combination on the technology and how to integrate both in one area.
Right. And obviously, again, with an operational center, because it's operations driven, you want to make sure that your technology infrastructure is strong in place in order to be able to handle multiple operating systems within the same sort of area. Biggest challenges, again, for an analytical one, it's again actions on recommendations, right? So the analyst can provide a lot of recommendations, but if the core operation or the site team does not take them into consideration, then it's not really generating any value. So that's a big sort of challenge for analytical centers. Whereas operational, again, site acceptance, right? Some of the old school guys, they might not accept it. They might not want to be, part of something where their area is now combined with other operational areas. So there is authority and change there. And so that's a really large challenge, but all of these can be overcome through good, solid change management, communication, and other practices that can be involved.
Yeah,
in terms of,
yeah, to add something to the last point, something that I found is, before you have an integrated operation, the areas work as a silos, and giving that area to a one operation center, they think that they are losing power, they're losing connection to what they have, and some old school miners, maybe they found that it's not the right way to do things. But what they need to understand is you're really giving more power. You're having, the best solution that they can have, the best help that they can have for each area is to have all integrated so they can make a better decision. So that's something that I found in my experience, that probably the acceptance of having an operations center is difficult, but they need to understand that it's going to give them more value, more decision making.
And having experienced that in my previous life, right, the reality is, yes, the challenges, the change management, communications, it's an uphill battle. It is very difficult to get there. But honestly, once, we saw the teams working together in this revised operating philosophy and working in conjunction, right, with the analytical teams supporting the core operations who are working together on a single platform, once the value starts being generated, everybody comes on board. Because in the end, in mining, it's all about tons and volume. And if you can deliver more sustainable value and tonnage throughout your value chain, it automatically starts getting people bought into the project and into the initiative. So yes, it's difficult to get there, but once you do, there is definite real value. Pedro, do you agree with that?
Totally agree, 100%.
All right, so in terms of, and I think we've covered a lot of this already in terms of the key takeaways, right? Just in terms of some steps to follow, whether you're designing an analytical center or an operational center, depending on your organization, right? You need to first understand your needs. What is it that you're trying to achieve by integrating either your technology platforms, your analytics, or your complete operations and your value chain? So getting a good understanding of what you're trying to do. Then design with people's and functions in mind, right? Don't just do a top-down approach to what somebody else and some other benchmark has really worked for. You need to really take into perspective your own team members. What do they really like? Work with them and really, design your analytical or operational center based on people and what they really require. Make sure it's value driven, right? Whether it's analytical or operational, do understand clearly what the value you're trying to unlock and what are the steps you're going to take in order to get there. Know your limitations. Each company is different. Each location is different. Each organization is different. And every single site is unique, right? So you need to really understand your capital, cultural, technology, location, and resources. What are your constraints and limitations? So do take that into consideration. Like some of the risks and challenges we mentioned, you can overcome a lot of them, but know them, understand them, clearly define them in your timeline horizon for your project, and make sure you've got a decent, strong mitigation plan in play.
Yeah.
Pedro?
Yeah, I think the key point here is what's the need of the organization? What's moving the organization to have an operations center? Is just only analysis, is BI, or is just operate from that? So the organization need is a key point on that. And what do you trying to achieve? What the company is the achievement, having an operations center. And here's a key point. For my understanding and my experience, the best scenario is to have in both, analytical part and right there, the operational area.
Correct.
So they both combine together, working in the same environment, really drift to a very, very, very good decision making. You have everything in there. You see any trend, you see any something that is going wrong in the mall, something that can be done better, and you right there take actions in there.
Correct. And I fully agree. Look, an operational center on its own or an analytical center on its own may generate a lot of good value, but the best of both worlds is really what we both believe is the right approach to going forward in terms of, getting that operational situational awareness between, your different value chain members from mine to mill to logistics, and really getting the advanced analytics teams behind them to support them with the right information at the right time to make those right key decisions. And this actually brings us into our next topic of discussion. So now you've decided you're going to build an IOC or an IROC. You're going to, design either an analytical or operational center. The question is, where are you going to do it? Is it better to do it on site, or is it better to do it remote? And that's another key sort of question that a lot of, ourselves in our previous lives and our clients today, they talk to us about this. It's like, well, where should we locate it? Should it be on our largest site? Should it be remote in some city or urban center? So that's the next sort of key discussion that we'd like to have with you. In terms of, remote versus local, right? Some of the key sort of things to look at is really understanding, again, coming back to, your design philosophy and your IOC or your IROC, is what do you need, right? Really understand, and especially understand the people's need, right? People supply side, people demand side. So, people within the organization that are going to site, people who are remaining remote, et cetera, et cetera. You need to really understand your people structure, and then also another added point is understanding, is your center going to be looking after just one site, or is it going to be looking after multiple sites, right? So these are all high-level discussions you need to have internally to figure out, right, should we locate it on our largest site, or should we locate it in a central city location? But again, this is one of the biggest challenges and biggest questions. We wanted to go through some sort of really, factors with you. But before we do so, do realize that every single mine site, even within the same organization or company, is unique. It has a unique signature, cultural signature, operating signature, and this will determine what will work for that site or not. So as an example, Pedro, if you'd like to cover some key factors, that you should discuss before you start going down the path of a local IOC or a remote IROC.
Yeah. Before we go to the factors, I totally agree with you, Saad. Each mine is a world. It's totally different from each other. And sometimes we try to do a benchmarking between mines, and each mine has this issue, this own operational constraints. So when they have to take the decision, it's not like, okay, because of them have done in that way, I'm going to do it in that way. Yeah. Each mine is a world, and they have to see what's the necessity, what's the constraint, and all the key factors they have to consider if the remote operation is going to be local, is going to be remote. It's multiple factors in there. Probably the most important one that is involved in that decision is the location of the mine. If it's located close to a town, it's not easy access, like in the mountains, like 4,000 meters above the sea level, or it takes 10 hours to get to the mine. So all these factors are going to help to take the decision if the remote operation can be done locally or it's better to do it remotely.
Yeah, again, and obviously people, culture, and your unique mindset are key, but also, as we were discussing earlier, all around your infrastructure, digital infrastructure, communications, how far is it, etc. All of these things need to be taken into consideration. As an example, what we do with some of our clients is we go through something called a priority matrix or location matrix, right? You're trying to figure out, okay, what are the things what are the factors that are there? What is the score I'm going to put on it? And what is the weighted strength of that score for that particular thing, depending on my site and my culture and my organization. So this is sort of really a good, solid exercise you want to do with your team members, but make sure you involve the people who will be impacted, the people who are today working on site, and you're saying, well, potentially you might be working away from site. What would be the considerations for them? And really get involved with them, because the weighting is going to be very important, dependent on your organization's unique needs. Pedro, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, it's very important to really, once you get all the key factors that is going to help you to take the decisions, is to give the right weight to that decision. So let's say location is going to be important. I mean, the distance between the closest town to the mine. Technology is going to be really high priority if you're, lacking really a good access in terms of internet or Wi-Fi connections. That's going to be, another key point in there. Cost, everything is doable with some amount of money. So the point is how much it's going to take to build outside or to build those technological barriers that you have, to have it remote, to have it local. So it's very important to add a weight to that, to each of the factors.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of, comparing the two, remote or local, right, we really wanted to look a bit more around, 2-3 of the main factors, so people and technology, right, and compare what are the risks and challenges between, obviously, a local IROC versus a remote one. So in terms of people, right, if you have a local IOC or integrated operations center on site, obviously, people are going to be there interacting all the time. Whereas if you have a remote version, right, people start losing touch, right? And obviously one of the ways you mitigate it is you get people to travel to site and site folks to travel to the remote center so you can maintain that. Some of the other ways, make sure you've got a good setup for, video cameras, virtual meeting rooms. Try to make everybody feel, right, as part of the same team as possible, as close to it as possible, right? So obviously from a local center, that's not an issue, but obviously from a remote center, yes, there is a risk and challenge of people losing touch with each other. Pedro, would you like to cover people culture in terms of old versus new, some of the old school guys versus some of the new, younger generation?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, a manager that keep telling me, I want face-to-face. I want the discussions be handled face-to-face. So we install video cameras on him. But probably a good solution that to mitigate at least a bit to don't be inside, and is to schedule a periodical visit for the controllers to go to the site and for the supervision to go to the remote operation. So, you always have a backup of controllers, like to cover vacations. for sure you have an extra controllers to be handle the operation. So once a month, once every 2 months, you send them to the mine and spend some days with the supervision and the management on site. And again, that's some of the old school versus new school supervisors. They like, to everyone be on site, be there for every meeting. But the technology helps to get everyone together. We have a very good experience in the last 2 years with the COVID. We moved to work remotely, and it's truly it's doable. It's already demonstrated that it's doable.
That's a great point you bring around COVID, right? Over the last 2.5 years, right? We've all gotten very, very used to working remotely, doing this presentation itself right now online instead of being in person. So it is becoming a new norm. People are getting used to the idea of being able to work on, conference calls, video sessions and stuff. So this is also leading to that major challenge of remote sites. It's actually diminishing that challenge. It's mitigating that challenge because people are getting used to it. Right. So this is definitely, unfortunately, COVID, one of the worst pandemics in our recent history, but the reality is it has led to people to adopting to this change. And so now, it is a good idea to sometimes say, you know what, I'd like to do a lot of this remote analysis stuff from my home. And instead of physical centers, now we'd be talking about virtual centers where you've got these virtual IROCs where, people can potentially control mine sites from their home. So, that's sort of the ultimate blue sky thinking. In terms of technology infrastructure, some of the risks.
Yeah, well, that's a big challenge. There is a big risk because, if it's analytic, probably it's not a big risk. You lose connection, probably you're going to lose some kind of analysis in there, but you're really truly operation away from the mine is a risk. You must have 24/7 connection, and you'll be running the mine all the time in there without losing any contact to the mine. It's way to mitigate, of course. You must have redundancy and not playing A and B, playing A, B, and C. And after you lose everything, you must have a contingency plan inside in case you totally lose a connection to the site. So there is a backup plan that it handle the operation to the people inside. You may have people that is trained on how to control the mine for different software that you use in the mine, probably some technicians, some operators that are well skilled, they can be trained in case you lose the plan A, B, and C, and you need to give the control to the mine. It's an issue, but the technology helps to cover and have a 24/7 and very reliable connection to the mine.
I think the key takeaway here is know your risks, know your challenges, and design a mitigation plan around it, right? And again, the more you think about those things, the better you can plan for them and the better you can mitigate them in the future. In terms of, now kind of wrapping this up, the last sort of key takeaways, right? Again, like my previous slide, understand your needs. What is it that you're trying to achieve? What is the value you're trying to unlock, either from a remote center or from an on-site center? What is the value you're trying to generate? Are you trying to support multiple sites? Build your priority matrix, right, in terms of local versus remote centers. Make sure you get people involved, find out who'll be impacted, make sure you talk to them, and take it from there. Pedro?
Yeah, in my understanding, the key factors to be considered and give them a right weighting is going to be the key to take that decision. Okay, so just get all the factors that you consider that are involved and weigh them in a right way that's going to give you a good answer on that. And of course, communication and change manager is people involved. Okay, and when it's people involved, communication and having everyone aligned is a key factor, not only to take decision to a success. Okay, that's communication probably is a key of taking any of these decisions.
Yeah, and that's lots of examples, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of interesting initiatives and projects over the years that have come about. And the real success happens when people adopt it and they want it and they want to drive it forward. Because if you can't get their buy-in, you cannot get them to drive that project forward, it doesn't really end up anywhere and value is lost over time or capital is lost over time. So really get your team members involved early, make sure you start communicating and talking to them and start any of your change management processes to manage your risk. So thank you with that. And we'll take some questions from you now.